Wonderful. Thank you. Well, hi. Have you ever had a time in your life where everything was just going wonderfully? You had a home that was comfortable, and your relationships were going pretty smoothly, and the work was going well, and everything just felt like it could go on that way forever, and you wouldn't complain a bit. Right? And have you ever noticed that they never go on forever? Yes. That moment where it suddenly isn't is what the moment of disequilibrium. Okay, you've been in equilibrium, you've been in this comfortable balance. Wonderful, easy, everything is fine, and then whoops, whoops, can I get back? Can I get back? I don't know, can I get back? The living systems of this world are all designed to be in what's called technically dynamic equilibrium. There's constant moving and shaking to have everything kind of just be good, right? Whether it's a forest or a body, we call it homeostasis, right? Or whether it's, you know, a lake or an ocean, there's this shift and then this shift and this shift, and as something changes over here, these other things all adjust for that, and that's how systems maintain themselves. It's wonderful. They're never stable. If it's stable, it's a heap. But if there's movement and dynamics going on, it's a system, right? And this thing is happening, and it's maintaining this dynamic equilibrium, and it feels really, really good. And then, you know, all the species are interacting, and then, whoops, there's a weird little species here. Okay, we can adjust, we can handle that, so we're going to keep on going. But at some point along the way, there gets to be a change that is called the critical fluctuation. And it may be the same things that have been going on all along, but now the system is so stuck, so structured, so stuck in the way it's been doing things that it cannot respond in that dynamic equilibrium way. And everything goes, I can't handle it, so what do I need to do? And we call that chaos. And in that moment of chaos is when all the new possibilities are present. Everything that could happen is about maybe, I don't know, could be, I don't know, could it, maybe, yes. Now, if the system, whether it's a mental system or a physical system or an ecological system or an emotional system, if it's attached to the way it was, oh, that chaos can go on for a long time. Because it's not like that. Oh, no, it's not like that. Oh, no, I wish it were like that. Oh, it's not like that. And we keep going back and trying to hang on to what was in the face of all these wonderful possibilities that are going, maybe that, right? Disequilibrium. Not an easy state to be in. Now, the economists have adopted this term, and they talk about it having to do with stock prices. And we have been indefinitely a period of disequilibrium as when it comes to the stocks in this country. And because the stocks are doing weird things, the bonds are now doing weird things. So the people who have had these nice, stable, sources of income and whatever are now feeling a little uncomfortable because they can't trust the stocks and they can't trust the bonds, and it's all scary. And if we are attached to the way it was, it's even scarier. And the biologists have adopted disequilibrium in genetics, only in genetics, which is interesting because that isn't where I would have expected to find it. And what they're talking about is if all the combinations of genes are pretty randomly sorted out across the population, that's what they're calling equilibrium. But if they start clustering in one spot over here and everybody's starting to look and act alike over here, that's disequilibrium, okay? So that's not how I would have used it, but that, if you run into it, that's what it means. Interesting ways that we use language That's another thing. English is in a great state of disequilibrium right now. All kinds of terms are being used, all kinds of ways that have nothing to do with what their original meanings were, which is kind of fun. And then we're inventing new terms right and left. It's fascinating. So, guess what we are living?
Chaos.
Yeah, we're living in the disequilibrium state that feels a lot like chaos. That's where we are. And it's okay. It is okay. I know. It doesn't feel like it when we start thinking about it, especially if we think about it in terms of what was instead of what could be. All right? Because if I'm constantly comparing 2019 to 1959, I'm in trouble. Right? And yet we have a large segment of the American population that's doing just that. And that's a large part of what we are concerned about as we look at the state of this culture, right? Or if I'm trying to make it look like 1969, I'm called a neo-hippie. Right? And, so if we keep trying to make this year, this time, this space and stage in our life like it was, we're in a losing situation. We will never restore equilibrium.
Amen.
So our job has to be to discover what are the seeds that are trying to come forth in this moment of apparent chaos. Because it's really only appearing to be chaos. And the longer we spend looking backward, the longer we're stuck in it, the sooner we can start going, I am ready for a change. I am ready for something. There are things, there are aspects of life that I'm ready to experience more of. Then we begin to feel the off-balance piece begin to come into a new kind of balance. A new kind of connection, a new kind of set of collective possibilities. Yes. Yeah. Now there was an ecologist, he was a specialist in trees, back in the East Coast. His name was C.S. Hulling. And he talked about this process, and it looks like an infinity symbol. This big figure 8 on its side, right? And he called it panarchy, which I've often thought was a strange term, but it is a wonderful term for this, because it applies to all kinds of systems. Everybody, pan, and archy as in ruling, right? This is the rule for all systems. We start out with a seed, and we build, and then we get really clear about it, and then we start interacting with other beings and other people, and then as the interactions start to happen, we start building structures, lots of structure. And if you're a tree, you're starting to build your bark now and get really strong and really stable and really structured, and then that critical fluctuation happens and everything goes into chaos, and out of that the new seeds emerge. Right? And he saw that in forests, he saw that in individual trees, and he began to apply it to systems all over the place, and organizational development people use it a lot. I did back in the day when I was doing that work. So this is normal. The two tricks to getting through this process are, one, recognize the disequilibrium before it's painful, and two, recognize the seeds that are trying to emerge early on and start focusing on them so you're not stuck in the chaos. Make sense? Yay! So, getting that awareness that the disequilibrium is happening before it's painful is a really, sometimes painfully learned skill. It's a skill. And the way we used to talk about it when in the old days, and I still do sometimes, is it comes along, you're going along, life is great, life is wonderful, and then you get a little nudge on the shoulder saying, pay attention, something's coming, pay attention, it's starting to do things. And you go, oh no, life is wonderful, I'm doing fine. And then comes, you know, you might want to pay attention. No, life is wonderful, life is fine. Until finally, it keeps getting a little stronger, it twists your arm, it breaks a bone, it does something. Oh no, life is fine, I can do this, I can handle this. You know, the money doesn't come through, oh, I can work around that. The car breaks down, oh, I can work around that. Keep going forward, and then finally it goes, stop! And you're flat on your back. When John was sharing with me what happened to him, he said, you know, I was given the opportunity to go down to Coos Bay, and I said, oh no, I've got too much going on here, I'll stay. And an hour later, he was in the ER. Okay? The world said, stop! Right? Because he wasn't feeling, he wasn't paying attention to this subtle opportunities that said, what you are doing, the direction you are going, it feels not balanced and I can keep going and I can make all this work, were not acknowledged. And so the dog tripped him. I'm sad for him, but that's how it works. It's how it works in my life, it's how it works in everybody's life I've ever seen, it's how it works in ecosystems, it's what happens. If we don't catch it early, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger until we end up flat on our back. So how do we catch it early? Well, most of us have to work back from being flat on our back. We start noticing it one notch before then. Oh, I've hurt myself. Huh, maybe I need to stop and think. I seem to be in the disequilibrium place. All right? And then we realize, oh, I don't have to wait till I hurt myself. Now I can, you know, oh, I woke up with a bad mood today. That's a very good one. That's a very good one. There is no such thing as waking up on the wrong side of the bed. It really is. If I didn't wake up joyful and happy, there is something going on in my mental system and emotional system that is ready for a change. All right? If I can allow myself to stop at that point and go, where is my joy? Where can I move? What can I focus on that will bring me to that deep, calm, joyful place? That's the point of perfect equilibrium. And from that place, then we become aware of the seed that is trying to express itself in us, through us, and as our life. And this is why I encourage you to turn off your televisions and your radio. Because it's very hard to get to that place when all the world out there is going, pay attention! No, that's them. Yes. And in that place, what begins to happen is we go, oh, I thought I had to do this, and this. I don't have to do all of those things. I thought I was supposed to. Supposed to. It's actually the sixth toxic word. Should, ought, must, gotta, have to, supposed to. All of those things are the ones that pull us out of balance, into disequilibrium. I call them the toxic words, right? If I'm following that list, I'm not in that calm, equilibrium, centered place. So what is it that's trying to happen here? What skill or understanding or connection have I been missing? What is the emerging delight that I've assumed I couldn't have, or that we couldn't experience in this world? Each of us has something. It might be greater beauty, it might be community, as Marsha just said. It's Sangha, absolutely. We all want Sangha. That community of like-minded folks who remind us what's important. It might be, I'm going to borrow more Buddhism, it might be that I've gotten away from my Dharma, my life purpose, the core essence, the reason I'm here on the planet. I've been following what everyone else said I should be doing and not getting in touch with, oh, this is what I'm here for. Or maybe I've evolved and I shifted and changed, and the things that seemed like they were the most important things in my life are, oh, not so important anymore. On Wednesday afternoon, I believe it was December 1, I was going through that awareness. I was feeling the disequilibrium, and fortunately I have learned to catch it rather soon. And I went, oh, I have different dreams than I had 3, 4, 5 years ago. I have different possibilities than I had. And you know something? This house is getting in the way of those. And as I shared with most of you, the next day I talked with the gal who's selling houses in our neighborhood, and the next day the sign went up, and then the next day 4 people came to look at the house. I wasn't anywhere around there. The next day 2 offers came in. The next day I signed one of those offers. A week later the inspection happened. A week later, 2 weeks later the plumbers came, and then finally after 2 weeks of phone calls the electricians came. And 40 days from the moment I got clear, I'm ready to be done with this house, I'm totally free of the house. Wow. And all the different things that needed to happen, happened. The office got moved to the appropriate place, and many thanks to this woman in the back of the room. The house is clean and empty. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Barbara came in and was a savior. She was marvelous. And the stuff that needed to go to this place went to this place and to that place and the third place, and the estate sale happened, and all these things happened. Now there is this opening. Now I have to say there were moments in the middle of all of that where I was very much in disequilibrium. And I got to practice. Yes, breathe, come back to center. What is it that's happening? What's going on here? What is it that wants to happen here? And there were a number of things that I knew when I came back. The garage sale, or the estate sale, happened while I was out of the house again. I was in Goose Bay. And I knew there would be things left, and I didn't know what there was going to be left. But I knew that that would be a whole new range of choices and decisions. What was I actually going to keep that I didn't think I was going to keep? Who was I going to give what to? And all that kind of thing. And it was like, if I hadn't been, I knew that it was the way to know that if I hadn't been clear before, I would definitely be clear now. Make sense? Yeah. So, we live in a time of disequilibrium. That means there are seeds trying to be planted. There are seeds actually trying to sprout. In a redwood forest, the seeds can't sprout until there's been a fire. How many have you been to like the Richardson Grove and you've wandered around the trees? I used to lay down inside the burned out hollow trees. The only part that's alive is the part that moves the sap up into the green, right? And I lay down in there and go, you are like this so that more trees could be born. Isn't that wonderful? They went through that disequilibrium, chaotic state that is so scary, called a forest fire, so that a whole nother generation of babies could be born. Nice. That's what it takes for a redwood. Hopefully it doesn't take that for us. Although some of us are here because something awful like that happened. There was a huge fire, and everything that seemed to matter was burned away, except the part that matters, the living part, is still here. And a whole new life is being born. What is that life? What are the seeds? What are the core pieces that we know we want to carry forward? But what are the new things that we're open to discovering and experiencing? When I think about the future of this nation or this planet, I can operate on my old, only this can happen, well, that'll never happen kind of thinking. None of us have that kind of thinking. Or I can go, wow, what would happen if we didn't have one group of people on top of a whole bunch of other people? Could we live on a planet where that didn't happen? Well, we know we can live in a community where that doesn't happen. Maybe the whole planet could be like that. Yeah, that'd be cool. That's a seed that's happening. And what would happen if we didn't, divide ourselves up according to gender and race and creed and all of that stuff, and we started realizing that we all have all the genes of everybody everywhere, right? Well, isn't that interesting? That's what's happening. Thanks to Ancestry.com and all those other people, we're all discovering we got genes from all over the planet. That is so cool. There are even Neanderthal genes wandering around inside of some of us. I think that's wonderful. Wow. Well, what would happen what would happen if nations stopped trying to be dependent on financial stuff for exchanging goods? I know we can do that as individuals. I know there are gift exchange networks all over the place, and this community does it a lot in food banks and SOS and here at FOOF, and we just give things to each other, and we always get what we need out of it, and it's really cool. I wonder if nations could start doing that. And well, it turns out that the weird sanctions that different countries have been putting on each other have led to other nations doing just gift exchange and barter.
Sweet.
I know. It's just, oh my goodness. All these seeds are ready to emerge into a way of life and living. That is what our hearts have been longing for all along, and everyone told us we couldn't have. Yeah. So the disequilibrium stage in the process of living, of being a living dynamic system, is the stage where we get to discover what we're ready to let go of, and what we're ready to experience more of. And that's very exciting and wonderful. And I want to remind you that the physiology of being excited is the same as being terrified. So if you start experiencing those symptoms that you've been taught is terror, breathe. You're simply excited. Something wonderful is trying to happen. Thank you very much.